Hello and welcome to another episode of a Wicked Parley. Tonight we're going to be discussing IQ, and more specifically IQ testing and its importance in society and importance in all things affecting both children and people. So,
Oh,
I see Kyle has joined the chat. Hello Kyle, it's good to see you again.
good to have you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Alright, so Rose, are you excited to talk about IQ today?
Yes,
Yeah, are we all feeling like really super smart and special?
maybe.
Oh, no.
I will do my best.
As I'm sure we all
It's been a
will.
long week.
Yeah, it has been a long week. I'll give you that. Yeah. All right. I think one of the most important things to kind of address when we talk about IQ tests in general is I think so much of what happens with IQ testing is usually swept under the rug when it comes to everything after the results. There's not a build-up. There's not a huge amount of information that's put out that discusses what happens perhaps if you got a test score that was maybe not your own.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens to the people whom are under certain social pressures to perform when they take those tests, or maybe they don't have certain access to certain kinds of information that would be acceptable or widely known in certain demographics. Hopefully tonight we're going to get through some of those particular questions and kind of address them and give our kind of opinions. And I hope that the chat engages with us and asks us questions. I see you, Kyle, there, and hopefully you have some feedback to give when we bring up some of these points.
Yeah.
And anyone else who's watching, who may be watching this in the future, feel free to use the comment section or email the show at awickedparley@gmail.com. And we'll respond back to anything you send. So, feel free to do it. I'd like to hear what people have to say. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the episode. But actually, you know what? Before we even do that, I see that Kyle has a comment. Rose, would you be kind enough to read any comments that pop up on there?
Yeah, of course. So the first comment from Kyle, besides the hello, is that apparently Kyle has taken 5 IQ tests since they were 8. So this episode should hopefully be interesting.
Yeah, okay. 5 IQ tests does seem like a lot on the surface,
Whew.
but it might surprise a lot of our viewers to know that IQ tests, at least in the state of California, I'm not exactly sure if Kyle's always been in the state of California or not, but they actually are tested quite frequently. There's this thing called the STARS test that happens in adolescence. And you can think of like the SAT scores, which everyone ever knows about, which are college-related scores that a lot of high school students will take. And there's a lot of tests in between those particular points that also are trying to evaluate how well you're performing and things like that.
Okay.
It's also not uncommon for schools to have an annual test to try and get a better ranking in the school system for more monetary support in their community. So
Okay.
all of those things can be construed as IQ tests in addition to anything someone might do for fun. But if Kyle's willing to share in the chat, I'd be curious to know, when it came to taking those 5 IQ tests, do you feel that those particular tests have shaped who you've become?
Yeah, while we're waiting on that, I always, thought of IQ tests as it's labeled an IQ test, but I guess if we're taking, any sort of test that, tests your intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would have taken, let's see, the 3-star tests in high school because it was done yearly except for my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
SATs.
Mm-hmm.
Do pre-SATs count?
Yeah, of course they do.
Okay. GRE math.
Mm-hmm.
I would have taken 7.
Yeah, okay, and you're working on a PhD right now, so
Yes.
I mean that tracks for a pretty standard level of testing when it comes to education.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, when they approach the topic of IQ testing, I think a lot of people are trying to essentially use it as a way of explaining away why people are getting support and why certain schools are getting funding, or maybe why someone who is not doing super well in this particular test might get some extra time doing some after-school classes and things along those lines. And so I think that there's more to it than just that, and so hopefully we're going to get into that a little bit.
Okay.
I see that Kyle responded.
Kyle responded to a question I put into the chat earlier where I asked, what do you believe are the good points of IQ testing and what about the bad? Get a head start on things. So Kyle says, in their opinion, the good is that it's an excellent predictor of future IQ tests. However, the bad, most research on IQ is faulty to a shocking degree.
I would definitely concur with Kyle's last bit of that response. Over the course of researching this particular topic, I came across a wide variety of IQ tests. And it's interesting to see that so many IQ tests are kind of built under the basic template. And without getting into too much gory detail surrounding it, all these tests typically try to limit as many of these extra variables as possible and focus on a preset conditions of what they consider basic cognitive function. And this is the ability to more or less read, write, and count at a certain level, meaning that a certain speed and a certain level of detail. So...
Doesn't that kind of inherently introduce a type of bias, though?
You are 100% on the nose with that one, Rose.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Whenever you consider the fact that, like, you start, eliminating things, you start taking things outside of what would be considered familiar for anyone who's not in your immediate surroundings. So yeah, absolutely. Tests like these would be inherently biased towards individuals of a certain persuasion, atypically Western cultured individuals, usually of the Caucasian or Asian persuasion, if you want to give it that particular way, and or at least that demographic. And that only has to do with certain cultural things and also certain countries and things like that, which all inherently affect directly the amount of information that's passed to each member in their population. And as such, these degrees hyper-focus on skills that are only really taught and reinforced in this particular cultural group. It also does not take into consideration other factors, which we're going to get into, but the main factors that is important is that typically one test builds off of the previous test. And so if a person who's very young takes a test and does fairly poorly, that original test is taken into consideration with the future test, but not in a way that is good. It doesn't retroactively increase the previous score. It just kind of showcases a level of knowledge at this point, and then they assume that they're going to do a little bit better, but not that much better, which is, in my particular opinion, an incredibly faulty way of measuring things, because it's been tested by other psychologists in various studies that the amount of exposure you have to your environment directly reflects your ability to perform well on an assessment test of any kind, whether it be an IQ test or whatever, right? And that particular factor isn't taken into consideration on the vast majority of current IQ tests, and especially of the past. I mean, the whole notion of how you formulate and account for intelligence is something that's kind of a big question in and of itself, even today. I mean,
I would imagine there's different types of intelligences. How do you test them all?
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean,
especially in one test, there's no way to do that without, curving it towards something else. Or at least in my opinion. It'd be hard to test for everything.
I would say that, my tendency to agree with you is probably not going to happen in that particular instance. I wholeheartedly disagree with it, because I think that it's possible to create a system by which you can account for the intelligence you're looking for, but I think you need to be able to appropriately quantify what intelligence is before you can create a test that can do that. And the thing that I found interesting was that there was one of the books that I was reading when I was researching the subject, about within the 500 or 600 pages, it was a lot. They came across this notion that there was a researcher that had been trying to, I guess, explain intelligence, right? And that explanation of intelligence was that they couldn't really adequately pinpoint this is what intelligence means, because by 1927 there were so many descriptors, linguistically speaking, that accounted for no real way to quantify what intelligence really was, and so they just decided to create their own sub caveat and then test those specific things. I see that Kyle has said some things. Do you want to share?
Well, they added something about their particular experience with the IQ tests.
Okay.
So they mentioned that their IQ is between 97 and 106. They were tested separately from their class for having a learning disability, which affected their identity because they were regularly called different or special.
Yes, we're going to be getting into that a little bit today when it comes to talking about that particular thing. But yeah, I am quite familiar with people who basically have said something along this lines. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting to note is the fact that you remember the numbers 97 and 106. Yeah, so different tests have different approximate number. No, yeah, we'll call it ceilings.
Scaling.
Yeah, scalings, yeah, that'll work. And so what one test might offer and say, okay, the average person is, let's say, a 98 or a 110, might be completely different on another test that might say the average person's like a 72 or something like that, right? And so I'd be curious to know, Kyle, do you know which test you took that gave you the 97 and the 106? I have a fairly decent idea what it might be, but I'm curious to see if my guess is right. Also, when it comes down to your experience, Kyle, specifically speaking to you directly, the fact that like you were, you had a feeling of being different than everyone else because you were claimed to have a disability, and how that affected you perhaps is an experience that's shared by many people, like a lot of people who have gone through these sorts of things. Like I remember when I was in elementary school, there used to be a different classroom for people who had difficulty reading, and they were basically, they didn't perform very well on the STARS test when it came to reading comprehension, and so they had to go to a very special room for extra classes, and those people were always, those young children were always excluded from other activities. And I mean, it made me feel bad that those kids were excluded that way, because I also was kind of excluded when I was a kid, and so it was like I could see it. We were excluded for different reasons, but I think that exclusion kind of like, it becomes part of your identity, and it becomes something you have to either overcome or struggle with. And so it's sometimes IQ testing, I think, can actually be a disservice to the people. I think that if there is a problem, it should be handled more discreetly than it currently is today, because children can be cruel.
Yeah, they can be. Like, if you could change kind of anything about IQ testing or how people test intelligence, how would you go about it?
How would I change it exactly though? Like, is that like, do I have to change it?
If you like, how would you improve or change the system to make it better?
I'd tear it down.
Tear it down?
Like, the first thing that popped in my head was I just want to tear it down.
That's technically a change. I don't understand. Wait, why do you think that's not a change? You're tearing the thing.
Well, I mean, destroying something, it mean, like, changing means it's still there, but it's like, it's different. I would just
You're
tear
changing it to non-existence.
You're
You're changing it to 0.
Okay. So, okay, so, I personally would say that when it comes down to changes, I think the first and most important thing is that I think that you need to get it away from the public eye, first of all, so that way you aren't going to be, I think segregating children inherently creates more problems than it tries to solve. And so I think like offering perhaps like, like some sort of tutoring at home, some sort of like extra things that can like, not be necessarily privy to the entire classroom would go a long way at helping children through those particular times. Not to mention, by not having that negativity, it doesn't negatively reinforce certain behaviors that would create very big negatives. Like I'm gonna try and use like some like subtle language, sorry. But I think that like there's a huge problem just with testing in general. When you take a kid who's already, they're going to be shy, or they're going to be, some sort of like issue, because typically children that know, okay, hey, I'm not doing great, they're already going to be withdrawn because they're going to feel like there's something missing, there's something wrong with them. When you put them into a different classroom, you're just basically telling them that yes, you agree with their feeling, that there is something wrong with you. And I think that's a wrong message to send to somebody, and that's why I really don't like the idea of separating them. I think that there's got to be different ways. If I was going to change it in one way and not tear the whole thing down, that's how I'd go about it. I see that Kyle responded, and I also see that Backseat Feeder's here. So hello Backseat, it's nice to see you again. Yeah. So, would you mind reading Kyle's responses?
Yeah, sorry, hiccuped.
No problem.
Kyle is one of those kids in this special reading class, and while they cannot remember the name of the test, they do have the paperwork so they can check if we want.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, honestly, Kyle, if you don't know, it's okay. If you want
You
to,
don't have that off the top of your head. It was just more of a curiosity thing than a we need to know.
Yeah.
We're nosy, not that nosy.
I mean, I'm pretty nosy. I'm 1,000%.
Okay, he's a little more nosy.
To know. No.
Okay, a host here, Justin here, is a little more nosy than I am, apparently.
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 Okay.
You know what? Different thing.
Okay, all right.
Alright, so you went into a little bit, about how IQ testing affects the people taking the exams and stuff, and how they feel. How does it affect... Well, it also went into how people treat each other, but that sounded kind of more like in a school setting or education setting. How about, like, outside of academia?
Sure. I mean, okay, so one of the earliest institutions that ever used IQ testing was done in the military, actually.
Oh.
And there's actually, according to the military, there's a certain limit, that a certain score you can't get. And it's kind of like a moving target, so I don't want to exactly say it, but if I remember correctly, it's in the 70 range, low 70s range.
Okay, so the range is depending on the time.
Yeah, if you score lower than this particular thing, it's not, you're not able to participate in the armed service. And they kind of have utilized IQ testing for a long time to try and figure out where people would best fit in the military. And they've gotten increasingly more complex testing as the years have gone on. I think that, like, in certain circumstances, I think that IQ testing can be quite beneficial, and I think in certain circumstances it's not. I think one of the obvious pluses to this is the fact that if you're in the military, you're less likely to get someone killed because you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So to me, I think an IQ test like there is totally fitting, because you wouldn't want a moron going, here's a rocket launcher I'm going to have behind you. I'm stupid, but I'm going to kill the guy, so I'm not going to care that you're in front of me. Yeah, I don't think you want that guy having a rocket launcher.
Kind of working with the baseline intelligence here?
Yeah. And so I think in that circumstance, I think it kind of makes sense. But I also think that, like, IQ testing specifically in, like, behavioral institutions that specifically, like, weed out certain elements of cognitive disorders or behavioral disorders, things like along the ideas of, like, autism and, like, certain other, like, things. Those IQ tests that don't really do a great job at being abstract enough to be able to be effective at being able to address the problems that those children have. They more like just identify the problem, and they don't really do enough to try and be more specific than that. And so in that way, that's also kind of a negative in my mind. Whereas the military, at least to me, I think it's more fair. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, these intelligence tests, they should quantify more. There should be more data collected surrounding the thing than just saying, spitting out a number and saying, well, because you got this number, we attribute you with this, and so we're going to expect this much of you.
Yeah, I've seen videos and whatnot about people trying to use their IQ score as if it's a weapon. Like, oh, I honestly do not know the ranges. So whatever a high number is. It's like, I have this high score number. I'm above all of you. And I'm like, you are a moron. I cannot listen to you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when it comes down to IQ testing, I think it's super, super subjective. I know for a fact that, like, I scored incredibly high in certain areas of IQ, like various IQ tests, like when it comes to abstract thought and my ability to kind of read and stuff like that. And so I do, like, extremely well. But if I was tested mathematically, I'd be terrible.
Oh.
Rose tutored me through statistics, just so everyone knows. Like, I am terrible at math. So
there's a couple of other things, yeah, but, like, mostly statistics.
Yeah. And so when it comes down to mathematics, it's just a terrible thing. So if someone were to do an IQ test strictly utilizing just mathematics, then I would come out, like, very stupid. But I know from my cognitive and my, at least reading ability, that's not necessarily the whole truth. So the various...
Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree with Backseat's comment, actually. Can you remember read that most recent one?
The last one?
Yeah.
Yes. So Backseat feels that IQ tests should be called aptitude test for a specific category rather than, IQ tests.
Yeah, I totally agree with that particular statement for a
Like,
variety of
I'd
reasons.
understand those ones. Like, I'd feel more comfortable to see, how compatible or how knowledgeable I am in certain categories. So either I know to stay away or, oh, hey, I'm good at this
Mhm.
type of scenario.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Well, on like, let's make sure we read through a couple of these particular comments
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to leave
Where
anybody
do you
out.
want me to start?
Let's start with Backseat's first thing, and then go ahead and read
Sure, sure.
Kyle's.
Yes. So I asked when Backseat Theater came in if they happen to have any opinions on IQ testing, which most people do. So
Mhm.
they feel that IQ tests are about niche knowledge. That doesn't necessarily mean you are smart. Someone can be good at trivia but bad at other things, to which Kyle adds most IQ tests are abstract, not trivia. Uh, Another thing that Kyle mentions is that IQ testing is used in the determination of whether someone is mentally disabled for the purposes of the death penalty. Pardon?
That's true. Well, actually,
Oi!
that's true in some states. Some states actually don't require it.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
On a positive, more poppy note, yay! Let's all play a game, shall we? Let's play a game.
Yeah, let me bring it up.
All right.
Oh
So,
gosh.
the things to know about this particular game is this. First, I want you to be able to keep track of certain things using a phone, piece of paper, doesn't really matter. Just something that can keep track of your particular responses. And this particular game is going to feature a series of colored shapes. Your job is to figure out which shape should go where. And that's all I'm going to share for the time being.
Yep.
I will finish the rest of the thing after we've had this little game. So go ahead and throw up the
Are you
first
ready?
one. Yeah.
Yep. And let me
Also, the
move
chat's in the
the
way.
chat.
Yeah.
I know. So it's kind of a do we want the chat up here? But like it's kind of in the way no matter
No, we're
unless
taking the
we
chat.
want this really
We're taking the chat down for a quick sec.
just a little bit.
Yeah. Bye, chat.
We'll have you back in a moment.
Yes.
All right. So this is the first question.
Yeah. We're gonna give you exactly 60 seconds to respond.
Where's the Jeopardy music?
I know, right? Where's Jeopardy?
I only have.
And if you're in the chat, you can go ahead and throw your answer in the chat if you want to keep track of it. If not, it's okay.
I should have put it on loop. Can I put this on loop?
No,
No.
that's okay. You just gotta keep on playing it, man.
Wrong one.
Okay, sure it was.
But
But all right, I think we're getting close to the end of it, right?
yeah, this is the 5th run through, so
All right, so we got one more after this, and then that'll be it for the choices. Maybe we're taking a little too long now.
huh?
I don't know. It feels like we're taking too long. I don't know. Not sure.
I mean, a minute sounds like that. Oh, we got a couple answers here.
Okay, cool. All right,
All right.
excellent.
So, keep track of your answers. We will be giving them at the end.
Yes,
All right. Next one.
yes. Next one.
Bum, bum. I
What?
forgot. No, I just kind of forgot what this one looks like, despite the fact that we made it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this
Again,
is.
5 options. We've got the top being, your pattern. What fills in the question mark? 1 minute. Go.
Oh my gosh.
What?
I would be 1,000%. Like, you had way too much fun making this. I just want to say that now. Like, you really.
You say that as if you also didn't.
Oh no, I mean, I did. I absolutely. It was
Look,
fantastic.
I get to be evil in very few circumstances. Okay.
Yeah, I know, and like having me just dictate you evil choices. It felt so powerful. It was great.
I think this is number 4, right?
Yes, it is. We got 2 more.
I just need to loop Jeopardy. Actually,
Yeah.
might be better to find the Jeopardy song.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that if we loop it for too long, then we'll get the copyright thing. So it's
Yeah. Maybe if I put it a little lower, maybe a little quieter.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who
I
knows?
don't know.
That's it. I don't think quieter is better.
I don't know. Like sometimes, it just depends.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we got for answers
All
here.
right.
This is
Interesting.
more of a color blindness test. There is a stream delay. Yeah, I think we kind of incorporated the stream delay because,
Yeah.
even when we switch it, there's still going to be that delay.
Yeah, it's
So
the delay
you'll have the
inherently.
minute either way.
Yeah, you'll have the minute full of minutes. Just yeah.
Okay, we have 1 and 2. Okay.
All right, interesting.
All right,
Interesting.
next
Okay.
one.
All right.
Oh, this monstrosity.
Yeah, this was fun. I like this one. This was great.
This one's kind of fun. I'm glad it kind of like actually fits on the screen. Hold on. There, a little bit, just a wee bit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's still there. It's good.
Yeah. So I think that was like what, 10 seconds? I don't know.
Yeah,
Like-
we'll call it 10 seconds. Yeah, we'll call it 10 seconds.
Yeah, we'll call it. Also, never mind. I was gonna make a mention about this particular site, but I think they'll understand.
Yeah, I think so. I think you'll understand.
I think they just I think both of the viewers at the moment kind of know how trolly I can get. So.
Oh, okay. So you're inherently like you're seeping bias. You're ruining the credit. You're ruining the reliability. Stop it. Stop ruining the reliability. Oh my god. Okay,
Last
this is
one,
the
I
last
think.
one. Yeah, it's the last one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Okay.
Alright.
Okay.
Okay. Last one. I kind of like this one.
Yeah, I like this one too. It's really
I
great.
like it.
Yeah.
It looks pretty. It looks pretty.
It does
It's
look
really,
pretty.
really
Yeah.
You know what would have been you know what would have been funky?
Well, we've been funky.
Like, I know you were the one with the idea for this test, and
Yes.
I kind of just helped make it. But like, what if one person created, the test and like actually had the other? Sorry. But like, what if one of us had created the test and just had the other one, actually do it?
Oh, I'm fine with that. I'll make one next time.
Okay. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I'd lose my mind because I overthink things. Like, that is one of the things that my professor has outright told me, that I am smart, but I overthink things to a phenomenal degree.
Yeah, it's true. You really do. 100%. Like 100%. There's so many times we've had conversation. I'm like, just relax. You're overthinking.
It's like, just chill.
Just chill. Just chill.
Like, actually chill. But it happened because I did something on a test that was based off of a previous problem. And she's like, why did you do this? So I did. The first response out of my mouth was, because I'm an idiot.
Oh, hey, you can't take my lines. That's terrible. It's terrible.
So it's just like, I just said, because I'm an idiot. And it's just like, no, you just overthink things. Okay, so
before we go to the next slide, we're done with this. Before we go to the next slide, though, before we do that, I want to just be very clear when it comes to this, okay? So there is a correct answer in every single one of the choices. And on top of that, I'm sure by now you've guessed that you are matching the combination of the colors and the shapes. That the shapes themselves are more of a red herring than anything else. It's just more like the color pattern sequences for the most part. So, the solution is on the next slide, which Rose, you please go ahead and share with everybody so that way everyone knows.
Yeah.
These were the correct ones.
Yeah. Let me see what they see on here. Okay. So, in case you haven't guessed, your matching colors. Answers for the above slides were 3, 1, 5, and 2. And if you're saying...
Did anyone get it? Like,
let me look. So, Kyle got a 3, Roxy got a 2 on the first one.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, 1 out of 4 so far. Kyle then chose 1.
Okay, so he's correct.
Roxy chose 2.
Okay.
Okay. Back for the third one, both of them got it correct.
Okay.
And for the fourth, and for the last one, Backseat said 3. Kyle said that they were all wrong.
Okay, so Kyle did the best on this one. Oh.
As for the triangle in the wrong place, that was what I was going to explain before you asked me to check the scores. That one is not that it's in the wrong place. It is the rotation of the entire mess.
Yeah, it's just rotated. It's not actually wrong.
This thing, in comparison to all the, the line, is essentially rotated about 75 degrees?
Yeah.
45. Yeah, it's rotated about that many degrees.
So.
But don't worry, like I made this thing and even I got confused on a couple of slides. If you gave me a time limit, I'm pretty sure I would have been like, I hate this.
Well, hopefully you enjoy that game. Maybe we'll make more games like this in the future, but yeah, let's move on to the next stuff.
But yeah, congratulations, you get a cookie.
A virtual cookie.
I wish I would call cheating on that. The last one didn't have the triangle in it. Wait, what? What do you mean it didn't have that?
It didn't need to have a triangle in it.
Oh yeah, so there's 4 shapes on this one. There's like 4 shapes, and it's just a combination of any 3 of those shapes.
Yes.
So that was, I guess, a killer and shape one, I guess. It was a replacement algorithm. You know what? That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a replacement algorithm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So hopefully.
Hopefully we had fun. And hopefully you guys who are watching this in the future, you guys would enjoy the thing. And if you guys did enjoy this particular thing, please go ahead and hit the like button. Please subscribe. We keep on losing subscribers. Oh my god! And please recommend the video to people. I want people to be able to come and say hi and do more things. So there's a few more things I want to kind of talk about, and then we're gonna kind of wrap up this episode. So okay. Okay. All right.
I'll take care.
Okay. So. All right. All right. So one of the things I kind of wanted to kind of discuss was with the fact that IQ testing seems to have a couple social costs that we've kind of alluded to, and Kyle, you probably have kind of experienced, and it's probably the experience of many other people, and that is that like a lot of times like the situation that people are put into because of IQ tests doesn't necessarily reflect reality in the way that I think a lot of the people who create tests are hoping for, and they don't really take into consideration the social cost, the fact that people are going to be outcasted, people are going to either have inflated egos because of a number, and the way in which they're going to approach future situations and perhaps the rest of their lives could be shaped by an IQ test. And so I think that there's a social ramification and a cost associated with this. I personally worried that IQ tests promote a certain train of thinking that either squelches or denies creative thought, and that we might get into a situation where some people are going to be, who would be potentially great artists, are just denied that opportunity because an IQ test told them that they were dumb, so they never were put in a situation where they could thrive and be able to showcase this potentially wonderful talent. Rose, when it comes to that, what do you feel about that?
How do I feel about kind of IQ testing and their results kind of having an effect on one's outlook for job opportunities and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I do agree that it's sad that if you're intelligent in one way, but the test doesn't explicitly say it, it's kind of going to be kind of ruining your own view of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, self-deprecating and whatnot, because you think you're an idiot, but turns out the intelligence that they're testing might not be your specific intelligence type.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got a mathematically minded brain. I do terribly in English. Absolutely terrible. I have never, ever, ever gotten an A in any of my English classes. It brought down everything. And I was so irritated. So I worked my little butt off to at least understand the grammar. So, so it's just like one of those things where I knew I wasn't intelligent on it, but I happened to have a good support network that kind of pushed me to persevere and kind of push over that rather than letting it be demeaning to me.
So would you say that because you didn't allow the test result or the outcomes of your various exams dictate to you who you were, you didn't let it become your identity?
I didn't let a singular test score define me. If I had that 11 I got in one of my tests for my master's degree, would have absolutely broken me. It was an 11 out of 100. That was terrible.
Oh my. Yes.
Let's just say it was a type of mathematics where I could not wrap my head around it.
That's scary. And enough talking about that. I'm genuinely frightened. I'm done. I don't want that.
It's just not my type of mathematics. Anyway, but the whole thing about, using these IQ testing scores is it's just a number that happens to give a value to one aspect of who you are. If you let it define you, you're kind of letting the system win, which is not something I would suggest for this particular system.
Yeah, definitely not. I actually, there's one thing I want to kind of discuss when it comes to at least like the social responsibility part. At least,
Yeah.
we talk about the fact that like students have this capacity, but I don't know. I mean, I know that politicians use what I'm about to say as kind of like a support me kind of thing, but I
Okay.
actually think that it's better used as a weapon and not actually used to fix the system. And that has to do with the availability of certain levels and educational tools that help students learn.
Mm.
I think that too often is the case that schools are underfunded. They don't have
Yeah.
modern textbooks. They don't have access to, like, say, modern computers. I
Mm-hmm.
am very familiar with a local high school who is still using floppy disks in 2022.
I.
Yes, you heard that correct. Floppy disks in
Oh my.
2022. So, yeah, like funding actually is kind of a huge problem, I think, when it comes to education. And that is going to, I think, dramatically reflect on the test scores that students of that particular institution are going to tend to have. And so, I think that the way in which we approach discussing IQ testing in general needs to take a look at the whole picture. I think that there's a huge point of oh my God, Kyle, you're making some good points. We're going to be talking about this in a second. Um, but I think we need to reevaluate the way in which we're trying to approach these tests in the first place. I think that the results of the tests also shouldn't be shared like with anybody until way after the fact. And when I say way after the fact, I mean like, congratulations, you graduated from high school. Here's your test results from when you were in
Mm.
elementary school. You know what I mean? Like, where it has, you get your results, but it has zero impact on you, good or bad. Because I think that's not really the point. I think the point behind those tests really ought to be to find if you're falling behind in one area and provide you the tools necessary to succeed. So if you're falling behind, then here is some sort of extracurricular activity that you can do discreetly that'll help increase your performance in one or more subjects. But I don't think that like if there's nothing wrong with you and you get a average score, maybe even a slightly below average score, you should be presented that, because it's going to shape the way you're going to look at it. And while there might be some cases where a person who maybe didn't do a great job would suddenly push themselves and excel, because I know for a fact, Rose, you have a great story about that,
Yes.
which I hope you can share in like a few minutes. But there's this other thing that I really think is important is that those particular things don't always have those positive outcomes. I think more often than not, when someone is presented with negative information, they lean into the negative because it's so much easier for us to accept. We're so much easier able to identify with our faults than we are able to identify with our successes and our things that are good. So I uh, strongly believe, at the very least, that these particular things should be protected. Okay. In the sense that they need to be, the information, if it's not going to present a obvious clear positive, it needs to be restricted and given at a time when the person is more capable of handling good or bad information. And I think that children are very impressionable and likely aren't going to be able to handle the information in a way that would lead to success. So with that being said, I want to kind of address a couple of these particular chats, and then I'd like you to share the story.
Yeah. So, where do you want me to start?
Go ahead and start where it says where Kyle's talking about.
All right.
Yeah.
Alright, so the first comment from Kyle was, I think intelligence tests, when done correctly so that it doesn't artificially create racial and gender differences, can be useful, but it shouldn't be seen as a strength or weekness. We
Hold
shouldn't.
on one second. Before you continue that, I want to kind of point this out. Kyle, when it comes to that particular notion, I really would love to know your thoughts on what a test would look like that incorporates that particular thing and doesn't have inherent racial or gender biases in the test. So please continue.
Mhm. The next comment was, we shouldn't use intelligence tests with the eugenics mindset of the 19th and 20th centuries.
I agree.
And the last one is, we can look to intelligence tests as a sign of lead poisoning or other signs of environmental barriers to growth. So kind of,
Yeah, I mean, that's the progressive viewpoint if you think about it. Like,
yeah,
you're looking for using intelligence tests to find where problems are, not to try and enhance, people who are performing and exclude underperformer students and things like that. And I see the backseats thing.
yeah, about taking IQ tests at school, where it's like, I didn't take a test that was labeled an IQ test, but I have taken intelligence tests. So.
Okay, yeah, I definitely have taken an IQ test before. I took I took the stars testing, the full stars testing. And when it comes to other tests, I took the graduation test, to the California one, the one that has you like taking a certain specific like set of skills and things like that, and writing a certain amount down. I also took a few other things. I never took the SATs, but I did take a pre-SAT test before, and I have done the practice GRE. So, and then I've taken a few for fun other tests that are that's kind of like in classes that were just kind of like not like serious, but like kind of like jokey, kind of like IQ tests. So yeah, I would say yes, 100%. I've taken them, and definitely taken them in school before. So. All right, cool. I think that gets through the gist of it because I see Kyle's other responses to backseat. So, Rose, why don't you go ahead and share the story?
Yeah, so this is a story. I posted the YouTube video already in the chat. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name because I know I'm going to get the second one wrong.
Oh, I'll do it. That's no problem. Trevor Mawad.
All right.
I'm probably wrong.
So they took the essential SAT in high school and they got a score. They originally thought, that they bombed the exam. Wasn't going to do so well. When the test score came back, it was a pretty decent score, like in the thousands out of 1,600. I think it was either 1,340 or like something like 1,400 or something. So they realized, oh, hey, they actually are smart. Maybe they should actually do something with, their education, because they, I believe, were the type of student that, skipped class, didn't do the homework and all that. So for their final year, they actually went to classes, did everything, and graduated, pretty high ranking, went to Wichita University, moved on to an Ivy League, and became a magazine entrepreneur. 13 years after that SAT that they took, they got a letter in the mail that turns out, hey, you were one of the 13 students that got the wrong SAT score sent to them. Here's the kicker. Their score that they got originally from, the mix-up was 1,300, 1,400, I don't know. Their actual score out of 1,600 was 740.
Don't you get like 600 points for just writing your name down?
Something like that. So their original score was 740 in comparison to, the 1,300, 1,400. But despite that, having that high number just gave them the confidence boost, kind of let them know that, hey, they're not completely dumb. And he worked as hard as he freaking could, and he became successful despite what that number was supposed to tell him.
So it just goes and proves the fact that the number is a bullshit figure. It doesn't prove anything, really. It just means that people can be highly motivated if they're presented an opportunity.
Kyle has a comment apparently about the your question to him. They said that there was a study done that looked at IQ tests, race, and gender. When you removed the men in white lab coats, big clocks, and the IQ test label, apparently racial and gender differences disappeared.
All right, I'll be honest when it comes to that particular thing. I think that like removing like the people in lab coats and the clocks and the IQ test label does do a level of service to trying to make the test more inherently accessible, I still think that like cultural differences are going to inherently be a problem. And the example that I gave to Rose when we were talking about this in the episode, I think when we were discussing the episode, is very valid in this situation, and that is that let's say like you live in America, right, and you're taking the test, and a fire truck is red in America. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what happens if you go to a part of the world where the fire truck is a different color? Let's say hypothetically the fire truck color is blue. When you get presented a test and you write down the fire truck, the correct answer being red, and you, in your memory, because of your background, the fire trucks were blue, so you write down blue and you get it wrong. How do you account for that in those tests? And
Mm-hmm.
while that test is that example is super like simple and probably doesn't exist in any of the IQ tests that are out there, there are tests that are equally similar when it comes to certain stories pertaining to like ice cream or like even like certain monetary amounts and certain interactions that are inherently linked towards what would be considered as the stereotypical suburban white America. And those types of situations are written into IQ tests a lot. And I think that a person who, let's say, is maybe from an ethnic minority that does not have any familiarity with that particular demographic would have a very difficult time being able to get the questions specifically correct. So that's my reasoning for why I kind of feel like you can remove race and gender differences to a certain extent, but it's not necessarily the whole thing. So I just want to make sure that it's very clear when it comes to that. And if you want to talk about this in the future, know that join the Discord, and I will be on Discord on Tuesdays and on most Thursdays. And if you'd like to talk about this with me at greater length, we can totally do that. So yeah. All right. Do you have any more final comments to say?
Not at the moment. Like, for the most part, we've gotten everybody's, or almost everybody's, opinions on IQ testing themselves, whether they, find it stupid or useful or anything in between here.
Mm-hmm.
Although it does suck that one viewer came in right at the tail end.
Oh no.
Oh.
Sorry, Jacket. We're wrapping it up. Sorry about it. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to say this. I really appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you coming in here and talking today. I appreciate the chat. There was a lot of feedback. I really loved it. I hope that we can get more people in watching. Hope we can get more people coming in participating during the live episodes. If you can't make it, at least hit us with a like, hit us with a comment, letting us know you actually watched it. Please hit us with a subscribe. Recommend us to everybody, so that way we can kind of get more people out there. And we're
Would
gonna have
love
more.
to have a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I would love a bigger conversation. I agree with that 100%, Rose. So, I'm going to say that when it comes to IQ tests, for the most part, I think are bullshit. I'm going to be 1,000%. And look forward to a bullshit series of X equals bullshit. And fully intend on doing that over the course of the summer. Yeah. With that being said, let us know any topics you think are bullshit in the comment section, or email us, or send it to us in Discord, and we'll see you all in the next one, you beautiful people. Good night, everybody.